First of all, a very warm welcome in the name of my colleague Wang Gun and the colleagues from FECC, the Foreign Economic Cooperation Center, and of course of the Sino-German Agriculture Center. My name is Jürgen Ritter, and I'm glad that we today are able to organize the DCZ Talks for the 6th time. This webinar format is a very flexible format in terms of contents, which gives us more flexibility in the choice of topics than we have in the work plan. Before we had we had China talks on rural development, digital villages, animal welfare, and so on. And today we dedicate ourselves to the international cooperation for food security. I'm very glad to hand over to the moderator of today, Michaela, and wish us all an interesting, not only presentation, but also discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I'm taking over right away. Also a very warm welcome from my side. I'm Michaela. I'm working at the DCZ, the Sino-German Agricultural Center. And before we'll jump right away into the discussion today, I wanted to very briefly outline to you why we are doing this seminar or this webinar, why this webinar. So I think perhaps we have an audience that perhaps not everybody knows what we are doing. So we are a platform dedicated to exchange between Germany and China on agricultural issues. And we discuss all kinds of issues that are of mutual significance for both countries. And then we facilitate the development of joint solutions. And those of you who have followed us perhaps know that food security is not new to our portfolio. We've tackled that a couple of times, but we've usually done that in a national context. So we all know food security is very important in China. We've looked at how China has been dealing with its food security at home. We also know that perhaps in Germany, perceptions of food security are changing. So we've also looked at that issue. But today, we want to look at food security in an international context. And I'm gonna try to share something with you. I hope I can do this. Let me see. Various presentations. Let me just share this. It's going to come up a bit slow, but there we go. Okay, so I mean, I'm not going to talk about this because I know that our experts will be talking about it, but we have globally, it is an important issue, whether we talk about hunger or whether we talk about malnutrition, including obesity. If we take everything together, malnutrition and undernutrition, we have half of the world's population that is somewhat not adequately nourished. So it is a big topic of global significance, and we know that both countries are very active on this issue in an international context. And so I think the questions we will try to address in this webinar, hopefully, is which instruments and mechanisms of international cooperation exist in the field of food security, and how are our two countries, Germany and China, using these mechanisms? How are they involving themselves internationally? And then perhaps also we can look at areas where we can align. I also wanted to briefly say that this is very much in line with a recently signed Sino-German Joint Action Plan on Cooperation in Agriculture. That plan was signed by the Ministry, the Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture in Germany and the Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs back in January this year. And it says many things, it makes many, puts forward many fields of cooperation. But one of the fields that is stressed in the plan is that both countries should boost their cooperation in international organizations, and it names specifically the FAO of the United Nations. So we are very much sort of in line with what is also going on the larger political level. And now, before we come to the presentations, I want to briefly introduce our three excellent speakers to you. Firstly, Dr. Carolin Weber. Carolin is working at the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture, where she is a policy officer, and she is mainly responsible for dealing with policies related to the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, the CFS, and I think we will be hearing more about this committee. And what I also found interesting was that in her work at the BMEL, she previously also coordinated strategies, agri-food strategies related to China, Japan, and other East Asian countries and regions. So she is not unfamiliar with our region here because we at the DCZ are located in Beijing. Then I'm also very happy to welcome Ms. Allegra Bruni. She works as a policy officer at the World Food Programme. She holds a degree in public law from Luis Guido Carli University in Italy, and she has extensive experience working in international organizations and on international development projects. And at FAO since 2018, she has been responsible for South and Trilateral Cooperation, FFTC, another large acronym that you will see pop up many times today. And finally, I'm very happy to present our third speaker. She is here with us in the room. I'm not sure if you can see. This is Dr. Song Yuhe. She is Deputy Director and an Associate Research Fellow at the Division for International Organization at the Foreign Economic Cooperation Center of MARA, the Ministry of Agriculture here in China. And she is an agricultural economist with a PhD from China Agricultural University, and also with extensive experience in project management and agricultural development cooperation. So I'm very glad I have these three speakers here. And before we jump into the presentations right away, just a small note on housekeeping. I'm just letting everyone know that we are recording this video. We do this because we want to make it available to people who cannot join today. We'll put it up on our YouTube channel so people can watch and can also participate. And to everybody who is not a speaker or panelist today, but in the chat, we would very much like to encourage questions. So if questions come to your mind already during the presentations, please type them into the chat together with your name and your organization. And then we will promote you to panelists so we can see your face and you can, post the question yourself. But please let us know that you have a question by typing something into the chat. And so without further ado, I would like to invite our first presenter today, Carolin, and I will manipulate the slides. And I hope I've made this full screen now. We will proceed with three short input presentations by our three panelists, and then go into a debate with all of them and all of you, hopefully. Carolin, if you can see the slides, then the floor is yours.
Yes, I can see the slides. Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for the introduction. And I will introduce to you the Global Food Security Policy of BMEL with focus on the Policies Against Hunger Conference, the PAH. Next slide, please, Michaela.
Yeah.
So Michaela already referred to the, I would say, rather grim situation of the state of global food security. And I will start by throwing out some numbers on the state of global food security to you, the recent ones. As you all might be aware of it, I keep it short, but I think it's important to set the scene for today's topic. So recent numbers from FAO considered that 2.4 billion people, this is almost 30% of the global population, did not have constant access to food in 2022. There's a mid-range of 735 million people, that's almost 10% of the global population, who are facing hunger. This is an increase of 122 million people compared to 2019, so to pre-pandemic levels. And the predictions for 2030 is also grim, stating that more than 600 million people will be facing hunger. Next slide, please. This is due to multiple crises. So we have the climate crisis, we have biodiversity loss, pandemic, we have wars and conflicts. But there are, of course, also underlying drivers, which are also interconnected often: inequality, poverty, economic slowdowns, downturns. For example, the implication of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine alone led to an increase of 23 million people, which are undernourished due to increase in markets, distorted exports, productions. And as this crisis scenario will probably prevail in the next years, it is critical to build sustainable and resilient agriculture and food systems to achieve global security and to transform the food system so that they can withstand external shocks. The approach of BMEL, which I present to you today, is that this transformation should be done with rights-based approaches. So the right to food is at the center of our policymaking. I give a quick introduction of the right to food now, as it is also the basis for the policies of Policies Against Hunger Conference, which is the main topic of my presentation, and I will dive into it in more detail later. Next slide, please. So here on the screen, you can see a short timeline of the right to food, which is deeply embedded into international human rights law. I will not list every international rights document which is listed here, but just for you to see. And I will just name the milestone in 2004. This are the voluntary guidelines to support the progressive realization of the right to adequate food in the context of national food security by FAO. I will briefly refer to them as voluntary guidelines for the right to food because the title is very long. And it provides a comprehensive and holistic guidance on how to implement the right to food on a national level. It addresses relevant issues, for example, access to natural resources, legislation, and the Committee on World Food Security, based in Rome, developed in the course of the years also many policy products addressing aspects of the right to food. For example, land tenure or gender equality. Next slide, please. So here you can see the key elements of the right to food, which are described also in the statement of the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights from the UN. The right to adequate food is realized when every man, woman, and child, alone or in community with others, has physical and economic access at all times to adequate food or means for its procurement. Meaning you need 3 key elements: availability, accessibility, and adequacy. Availability is the ability to feed oneself, including access to land and other natural resources. Accessibility means the physical, economic, and non-discriminatory accessibility at all times, as well as access to all relevant information. And a big aspect of accessibility is affordability. So food must be affordable. The third key element is the adequacy, meaning a diet which meets nutritional needs, free from harmful substances, and a diet that is composed in such a way that nutrients are sufficient for physical and mental development and also for its maintenance. So we see the right to food means basically the right to feed oneself in dignity, as it is always said. I have to add that the right to food is also deeply interconnected with other human rights, as the right to water, the right to life, of course, the right to health, to education. So it does not stand alone, but it is linked to these other rights. Meaning, on a governmental level, the implementation of the right to food is also a cross-cutting issue. So in Germany, many different departments are competent for aspects of the implementation of the right to food. So we at the Ministry for Food and Agriculture we see the Food and Agriculture side, but there's also the Ministry for Economic Development, the BMZ, or the Ministry of Health, for example. Next slide, please. So the right to food entails implementation on national level and international level. I will just briefly touch upon the national level very shortly, because this is not the focus of our DCZ talk. But I listed some prominent examples of the Ministry for Food and Agriculture, which is the Food and Nutrition Strategy, the Protein Crop Strategy, and the expansion of organic farming up to 30% by 2030, which are one of the prominent examples of the implementation of the right to food of the BMEL in recent years. And I will just name the Food and Nutrition Strategy, because there we had also a broad participation of different stakeholders, and the strategy is built upon these recommendations. And this aspect of participation is also an aspect of the right to food. So you can see how we implement the right to food on a national level. And if you'd like to get more information on these national projects, please let me know. I'm happy to connect with colleagues in charge of these strategies. Then I come to the international level. So global food security in BMEL is addressed at different levels. So we have the multilateral level, we have the international cooperation, also the bilateral cooperation. So for the multilateral cooperation, in particular, we work together with FAO and the CFS, so the World Committee on Food Security, but also in G7, G20, and other fora, of course. We have also an international scientific cooperation, which has a focus on agroecology and agroecological approaches starting this year. Then we have the International Project Cooperation, where we have bilateral projects with the partner countries, but also the bilateral trust fund with FAO, through which we finance project. And our international project cooperation is based on the right to food. And then we have BMEL owns conference formats to promote international cooperation, to promote multilateral exchange, to stay in dialogue. And the most prominent ones are the Global Forum for Food and Agriculture, the GFFA, which takes place annually in January, and the Policies Against Hunger Conference, the PAH, in which I will dive into in more detail now. Next slide, please. So the Policies Against Hunger Conference is a conference series of BMEL, which started first in 2001. The focus of this conference series is the right to food and its implementation. And the aim is to give a room for inclusive discussion of topics relating to hunger and malnutrition. Meaning we use a multi-stakeholder approach. We have participants from different stakeholder groups, from government, parliament, international organizations, civil society, private industry, and science, which we gather together on normally 1.5 to 2 days in Berlin to discuss in a rather informal matter all these topics arising. Next slide, please. So you remember the slide I showed before with the timeline. There in 2004, the FAO voluntary guidelines on the right to food were born. And now 2024, we have the 20th anniversary of these guidelines. This is why the BMEL had a special edition of the Policies Against Hunger Conference, which addresses 20 years of action advancing the human right to adequate food. So our aim was to take candid stock of the successes, failures or shortcomings, and also the future challenges in realizing the right to food. We wanted to provide also a concrete impetus to a rights-based transformation of food systems, which could be incorporated in other international processes. Next slide, please. The Policies Against Hunger conference was very successful because it advanced the momentum, the discussion on the right to food. We had around 200 participants from 38 countries. We also had high-level participation, of course, by the German government, so BMEL, BMZ, but also from Brazil, State Secretary Bruni was there, from the FAO, DDG Martina was there, and the CFS chair, who played a very important role at this conference. In several panel discussions, we touched upon different aspects of the right to adequate food, for example, on social participation concepts. So we evaluated the German Food Council, but also the Brazilian Conselho, which is also a food policy council. We heard also voices from projects on the ground with a rights-based approach from different sectors, so from agroecology, water management, land tenure, school meals. And we also had the project Arms to Farms, which is a small project in the Philippines aiming to transform soldiers into farmers. And then we also had a focus on healthy diet. In 6 working groups, we discussed a bit the future of the right to food. So the next 10 years up to 2034, what could the contribution of all the different stakeholder groups, because we had this multi-stakeholder approach, could look like, and how could they contribute to the realization of the right to food? Next slide, please. And of course, we had joint findings and recommendations of the Policies Against Hunger participants, which were presented to CFS and BMEL. Inter alia, the voluntary guidelines on the right to food and the CFS policy products provide a holistic guidance for the implementation of the right to food. Then it was stated that the CFS, the Committee on World Food Security, still plays a decisive role as a global coordination platform in the area of global food security. It is most important to deepen links and create synergies within the UN system and beyond, because the right to food is so interconnected with other different rights. Then it is essential to promote a human rights-based approach, and also it was recognized the importance of multi-stakeholder approaches, like to bring together all these different stakeholder groups to really provide a sustainable solution for the future. Next slide, please. To give you a quick outlook, the report of the Policies Against Hunger conference will be published in the coming weeks on the website, which is shown on the screen, if you're interested. We are aiming that the outcomes will be incorporated into international efforts to realize the right to food. So, for example, the CFS plenary. This is also why the joint findings and recommendations of the conference were also given to the CFS chair to inspire the CFS plenary taking place in October 2024. We also hope that the FAO World Food Forum, for example, or also the Global Forum for Food and Agriculture taking place in January 2025 will be inspired by the Policies Against Hunger conference. So to wrap up, the Policies Against Hunger conference was very important to us this year, taking place, reminding us of the importance the voluntary guidelines of the right to food still has 10 years ago and will have in the future. And now the Policies Against Hunger conference also shed light on how a way forward could be. So with this, I thank you for the attention. I think it's the last slide, Michaela, isn't it?
Oh,
yes. That is it. Okay, thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to discuss with you this topic later on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that has given us a very good overview what BMEL is doing internationally, globally. Actually, I also learned a lot. I'm not sort of up to date on the details you just shared with us here. Now we are moving to a second presentation by Allegra, and I think we'll see the international landscape is very complex. There is not just the CFS, but there are many organizations, institutions under the umbrella of the UN and the FAO. And now we're moving to a mechanism, I would call it a mechanism, that is called the South-South Triangular Cooperation Mechanism. And Allegra, the floor is yours, and I'm bringing up your slide, if I can.
Thank you, Michaela. And first of all, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allegra Bruni, and I'm working in the South-South and Triangular Cooperation Unit in WFP in headquarters. And it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And I'll try to provide you with a brief overview of WFP's role in South-South and Triangular Cooperation, hoping that it will be just the starting point of a fruitful discussion. Globally, WFP is recognized as one of the most innovative UN entities supporting SSTC. And WFP has consolidated its corporate reputation as an SSTC partner, supporting countries in their efforts to share their and adapt others' zero hunger solutions through various institutional arrangements, including through the creation of what we call the Center of Excellence, which are our knowledge hubs. WFP has also been a key contributor to intergovernmental processes such as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which features SSTC as a critical means of implementation under SDG 17. Next slide. Why is WFP engaging in SSTC? Because we support countries from the global south. They can share zero hunger solutions. And by doing this, we contribute to our strategic objective 4, which is strengthening country, national, and local systems. And by doing this, we accelerate country-led efforts to achieve SDG 2 and SDG 17. So countries recognize WFP value proposition as an organization that can facilitate result-oriented, demand-driven, and localized SSTC that supports country-led efforts to achieve SDG 2, zero hunger, and SDG 17, partnership for the goal. Of course, with a dedicated focus on the most vulnerable and food insecure population. Next slide, please. Allow me to just mention a few things about WFP SSTC policy update that was approved by WFP Executive Board last year, because these represent a significant leap forward in WFP's commitment to supporting and empowering the Global South countries in sharing, adapting, and implementing zero hunger solutions to strengthen their national system. And this policy update arrived at a crucial moment, demanding our unwavering capacity and dedication as the world grapples with multiple crises, as Carolin already mentioned. So we need to focus on eradicating hunger, and SSTC can support on this. The policy outcomes are expected to contribute to the strategic outcome 4 that I mentioned before of our strategic plan, WFP strategic plan for 2022-2025, by enabling national stakeholders to strengthen their capacity, programs, and systems for food security and nutrition through South-South and Triangular Cooperation. How do we do it? We have a dedicated unit at headquarters in Rome that supports regional bureau and country offices. And SSTC, facilitated by WFP, has enabled global South country actors, so institutions, but also individuals, to sustainably adapt and implement these zero hunger solutions. This SSTC unit has been supported these regional bureau and country offices, and we provided our services to support them together with the Center of Excellence that have been established in China and Cote d'Ivoire and in Brazil to support them in sharing this knowledge. And why we do it, as I mentioned, SSTC is key for the achievement of the 2030 agenda. Next slide, please. So allow me to say just a few words on our role, WFP's role in SSTC. As I mentioned, we are guided by our SSTC policy update, but in WFP, we have significantly expanded our engagement in SSTC in the past years. And WFP has invested in institutional, operational, and staff capacity to facilitate the learning and brokering of zero hunger solution among developing countries. What we are doing, we play the role of a knowledge breaker and the partnership builders, meaning we are a facilitator between countries that have solutions, zero hunger solution, with other countries, especially from the global south, that need these zero hunger solutions, so they can learn from other countries, adapt this solution to the local context, and overcome these development challenges. Next slide, please. Why WFP? What are the comparative advantages of WFP in facilitating SSTC? So we have seen in the slide before that we are a broker, we are a facilitator, and what is our comparative advantages compared to other UN agency? For sure, the WFP comparative advantages as an SSTC broker include its extensive field presence, the dynamic global operational footprint, the advanced technical knowledge, the innovative institutional arrangement. We have this center of excellence in 3 different continents. That it's a growing network of knowledge hubs, let's say. And also, as Carolin mentioned, we have a multi-stakeholder approach. We work with a wide variety of partners that consistently mainstream SSTC in country programming. And we also have technical expertise in thematic areas that are relevant to zero hunger. As also SSTC is a cross-cutting mechanism that can be applied to any area of work, and WFP is trying to respond also to the new areas that were requested by member states. Next slide. I mentioned that we have 3 centers of excellence. In 2011, we established our first center of excellence in Brazil. And since then, we have seen the impact of South-South and triangular cooperation that has been growing and has been evolving. Then China and Cote d'Ivoire have also established these centers, and we have other countries that have established their own mechanism to share learning. The one in Brazil has an expertise in school feeding initiatives, while the one in China, the China Center of Excellence, focuses specifically on rural transformation. And in Cote d'Ivoire, the Center of Excellence is the Regional Center of Excellence against hunger and malnutrition. We call it CERFAM. And they are at the forefront of the implementation of WFP SSTC initiative. And they are their knowledge hubs that can support us in different areas of work. Next slide, please. What is the role of this Center of Excellence? They are essential for sharing the solution and the best practices that come from the Global South. SSTC considers the Global South as also a source of solution and innovation, and we use this Center of Excellence to share these solution and best practices that come from the Global South, and through them these can be shared, and other countries can adapt them to their local context. And they are also a sort of matchmaking of country needs between our regional bureaus and country offices, as well as HQ. And they also provide technical assistance to local government and country offices. Next one. I just wanted to say a few words also on our internal knowledge management platform. We call it South-South Match platform. It's an internal WFP platform that was developed to enhance the South-South and triangular cooperation, information and knowledge management system, with the view at ensuring the sustainability and user friendliness of the platform. So through this platform, we collected the best practices from the countries, and we have already 250 vetted SSTC opportunities, meaning supply, demand, and completed initiative. And each opportunity provides information on what government institution is requesting or providing the opportunity, a brief description of the opportunity, and suggested country matches. Meaning we are the broker and the facilitator. As of now, we use the South-South Match platform that identifies the country that can share their solutions and other countries that are in need of those solutions, and we make the match. So far, it's only an internal platform, but this is a very good starting point in our matchmaking role. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I want to say a few words on the WFP facilitated SSTC with the 3 strategic focus areas. Okay, maybe I can say a few words on SSTC results. As you can see here, we have 150 national institutions that provided technical and or financial resources to WFP facilitated SSTC, and this includes our centers of excellence. As I mentioned already, we have the Center of Excellence, 3, Brazil and China and Cote d'Ivoire. We mobilized more than 11 million between 2019 and 2023. And we also have SSTC included in what we call the country strategic plans. More than 80% of them have included SSTC, meaning that there's a strong interest from countries in working in SSTC. And we have a total of 20 national policies, strategies, and programs that are contributing to SDGs that were announced through WFP facilitated SSTC in 10 countries. Next slide. Allow me to say just a few words on moving forward. What are the strategic focus area where WFP SSTC unit will focus on? We will try to consolidate what WFP is offering, meaning our portfolio has been growing dynamically since 2015, but we want to expand our impact in traditional thematic areas. So the traditional thematic areas are social protection, nutrition, school feeding, but we also want to expand in other new areas of demand, given that the harsh impact of interlinked crisis, we want to, WFP experiences demand for the facilitation of South-South learning, also in other areas such as supply chain management, emergency preparedness, resilience building, climate change, among other, and also everything that is related to SDG 2 and the humanitarian development peace nexus. The third pillar is ensuring quality and results, meaning that WFP has increased its focus on quality and results through some dedicated tools, as I mentioned, the internal matchmaking platform, but also we are working also on the monitoring and evaluation side. Our role in HQ, is, besides being the facilitator, is also to ensure the quality of the project that WFP is currently implementing. Next slide, please. This is very much aligned, let's say, with what I just mentioned in terms of a way forward. But what I wanted to say that WFP stands ready as a partner to support other countries in realizing their ambition of becoming SSTC champions, to share their own country-owned solutions. And since SSTC is cross-cutting and can be applied to any area of work, and is just a sort of sharing best practices and lessons learned, this can be applied to any area of work. So we stand ready to further discuss how to use the potential of SSTC in any area of work, including what Carolin mentioned before. I think that's all from my side, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Jane. Thanks a lot, Allegra. That was also very interesting. I think what I just got from these two presentations is that it's a very complex landscape out there, different mechanisms, different institutions, engaging different stakeholders. And what will be interesting, perhaps we can tease that out afterwards in the debate, is whether these sort of exist in parallel to each other, or whether there are actually synergies that you guys know of or that could be leveraged. I would like to encourage, first of all, thanks so much, first of all, to all the three presenters. I think we've seen different aspects of how countries and international organizations are trying to tackle issues around global food insecurity. We've heard a lot of different names, acronyms, and I guess the task for now would be to kind of try and figure out, is what you are doing, is that complementary? Is it like different tracks? Do you actually even know of what, does the German side, does Carolin know what Yuhe was talking about, and vice versa? How much do you understand of each other? And in this regard, I would like to encourage everybody as well from the audience, start typing your questions into the chat. I will go ahead with a few introductory questions to get the debate going, but I would like to hand this over to as many of you as possible. And my colleague Ahmad-Jan is gonna gather the questions and promote people, like show their face. Okay, I think before we go into the details, I would start with a question to Carolin and zooming out again before we move deeper into the details. So we've seen a lot, we've heard a lot, there seems to be a lot going on. There is a lot of resources being put into international cooperation for food security, many different mechanisms being established. But yet me, as somebody who is not deeply involved in this topic per se, I have to say, it looks like we are very far away from realizing the right to food, from realizing SDG 2. Perhaps we are definitely off track. Probably we are even backtracking. So it's perhaps too big of a question to give a definite answer, but give it a try, perhaps, Carolin. How would you assess the international landscape when it comes to cooperation for food security? What are the hurdles that have holding us back? And how do you think, from your perspective, from the perspective of the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture, how could this be overcome? Do we have too much? Do we have too little? Are we just not coordinated? Are there other issues that are standing in the way? How would you view this, the current situation, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. I think you put your finger in the very most important part. Yeah, we are off track, SDG 2, achieving SDG 2. I think this is quite clear. Nevertheless, I think there is still hope if we really put our forces together, join forces, to achieve zero hunger, maybe a little bit later, but not too late, I hope. Your question was about the assessment of the international landscape. So I would say that the international landscape for food, global food security, is very widespread. So there are a lot of different initiatives, especially in the recent years since the outbreak of the war against Ukraine. There has many initiatives been popping up. So, for example, the German government initiated within the realm of the G7, the group of the G7, the Global Alliance for Food Security, the GAFS, as it is called, which serves as a coordination platform for global food security. This is helpful, I think, right? Because this is what you need. You need a better coordination, I would say, because you have these different mechanisms, fora, discussion formats, initiatives, and that is really what I would like to highlight. You need coordination. You have to create synergies, and because you have to recognize that there is the need for a holistic approach, and which is also important, I feel, is that it is necessary to avoid duplication of initiatives. And we can see this a little bit sometimes. with every new, for example, G7, G20 presidency, a new global food security initiative is popping up, and it is very important that it's not duplicating itself, but it's kind of getting good together, I would say. And an example where we as BMEL, we see a need for strengthening the links between different initiatives is, for example, between the Committee on World Food Security, which for us, of course, is as the right to food-based multi-stakeholder approach. The most important one is to create synergies between CFS and the UN system, like, for example, with the Rio Conventions, because, of course, you cannot transform the food system while only looking at one aspect. You have to look at climate, you have to look at biodiversity. This is why all these international landscape has to come better together. This is certainly one aspect we see as BMEL. And what maybe I can also add is that it is essential to have long-term solutions, not only short-term answers to these crises keeps popping up. And maybe to wrap up, I would certainly say the right to food has to be put on is the core for the international agenda. And I think we as a German government, we certainly work in this direction. It's not only BMEL, it's also the Ministry for Economic Development, the BMZ, which I think has this, is undertaken this TEEP project with the FECC. Because there's a lot of, I would say, financial resources to finance really the work on the ground. Maybe to answer this question a bit short.
Yeah, I think these were very good points that that I think seem probably they come to the fore when we were listening to your presentations. Coordination, synergy, avoiding duplications. That's something that I would probably also have noted from listening to your three presentations. And as you just mentioned, the BMZ, perhaps for those in the audience that are not German, so the BMZ is a different ministry, the Ministry for Development, and they are, of course, also engaged in issues around food security. So I guess we also, on the country level, we have a situation where there is not one government or one ministry taking the lead. I would actually be interested to hearing what the situation is like in China, who is taking the lead beside Mara. But in Germany, we have BMEL, the Ag Ministry, getting involved, but working mainly with the CFS, the Committee for Food Security, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have the Development Ministry working mostly with WFP, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I think that creates perhaps additional complications, but perhaps also synergies. Yes, please, yeah.
Sorry, maybe just to, we are mainly working with the CFS, but also with the FAO. So we have a bilateral trust fund with the FAO through which we also initiate projects with the FAO. And then the Ministry for Economic Development, the BMZ, is working, I think, mainly with WFP and IFED, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a question?
One online question is FECC and DCZ cooperating with the Sino-German Agricultural Center on Sustainable Development.
Okay.
SDGs.
SDG. There was an online, my colleague just, I don't know if you could hear, my colleague just mentioned we had an online question. Perhaps he can also bring up the speaker. It's Mr. Hoyos from GIZ. He's asking, well, to read the question again. Yeah.
Whether FECC and DCZ have a coordination on SDG, UN SDGs. Sustainable development.
I will respond now. Okay. Oh, this is fine. Hello, can you hear me? Thank you for your question. Because I'm from the International Organization Division, so our division is mainly focused on the China FAO South TSSTC project. But from the FECC side, I think So what we have done, like our China FAO Corporation or other international organization are maybe not very directed to the SDG, but I think that's also in a very large framework to contribute to the SDG. For example, that's our project like an example. Our project has helped the developing country to improve their technology level and improve the level of food security of them. So I think that's one to realize one of the SDG, one of the goals of the SDG, right? The zero hunger, right? Yeah. And also, like the China FAO Germany triangular cooperation, we are focused on the low carbon tea area. So I think that is also it is also a very good approach for the climate change or the agriculture sustainable development like that.
If I'm not mistaken, the question came from Conrad and was about the cooperation with a GIZ project on sustainable development, which is also implemented in Beijing. There is, of course, communication between the projects, but as far as I'm informed, that project is not so much focusing on agriculture, but on other issues of sustainable development. That's why it's rather limited, the exchange, but we certainly have them on our screen, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if Mr. Hoyos, he didn't somehow pop up, right? I'm not sure. Otherwise, okay, fine, yeah. Otherwise, we could you could specify or rephrase the question. But I think we've had some feedback on that. But let me just move on and ask Allegra, to what extent are you the SSTC mechanism and the CSF? Is there any overlap? I just got that sort of from the previous question or from the answer by Carolin. Do you work together, or are these? Can I think of these as two separate projects?
Thank you for the question. There's interconnection that could be further explored. As I said, SSTC is a means for implementing the 2030 agenda, and there's a lot of alignment with the achievement of SDG 2 on zero hunger. And we could definitely use SSTC as a sort of mechanism that can be used to share best practices. Technologies, promoting sustainable agriculture and zero hunger solutions. You previously mentioned, for example, the low carbon tea project, and you mentioned the fact that we need to ensure synergies. I can't see more synergies than this because, for example, what our speaker, when she talked about the FAO, MARA, South-South Cooperation Program, this was my previous work, and the low carbon tea co-financed by Germany and FAO was actually was born in a side event, in a bilateral meeting during the side event of South-South Cooperation with me and a colleague from climate change. So SSTC can be used for any area of work. And the best practice, for example, that Carolin mentioned, the solutions, the collection of lessons learned, these can be spread across a wider number of countries by simply using SSTC. So when you talked about synergies, this is how I see SSTC working more closely with SDG 2 and with those who have those lessons learned, those solutions. We can simply help them to have a wider impact on the ground. And when it comes to also the work the FAO is doing, this is very familiar to me and to other colleagues that are online, but we can definitely ensure more coordination and more synergies because each agency has its own comparative advantages. And just allow me to say a few words. We do have a project that involved the three agencies, the WFP, IFAD, and FAO. So the three UN Rome-based agencies joined forces to positively transform global food system through homegrown school feeding programs by using South-South and Triangle cooperation. And they launched a project called Strengthening National Homegrown School Feeding Programs through SSTC, which is, and the three agencies are working together to build a long-standing collaboration in SSTC between the agencies. And they try to leverage each agency's comparative advantage in order to enable countries of the global south. For example, we started in Kenya, to share their knowledge and experience to strengthen national food system to reach the most vulnerable individuals. This is just a starting point, but this is a concrete action on the ground of three agencies working together towards the achievement of SDG 2 using SSTC. And I would be more than happy to further discuss with Carolin how we could support each other, how could we use the SSTC mechanism in order to ensure that we have bigger results by using simply sharing some lessons learned, rather than we keep saying that SSTC is cost effective. Yes, it is. Why? Because you don't have to fund X number of projects. You fund one project, and with the lessons learned, you can simply share those lessons by a webinar, through a study tour, through a technical visit, exchange visit, in other X number of countries. By adding simply a component to a project that doesn't cost much, because you can also virtualize the activity, rather than helping one country, you can help 10. And you can also ensure cross-regional collaboration, because some countries, for example, climate change, it's a global challenge that is the same in small island development countries that are in Africa rather than in the Caribbean. They're facing the same challenges. So why don't we invite them to see how a government has overcome those challenges by simply inviting key technical high-level people from the government to go and visit the government that has this solution. So once they come back, you can do a follow-up and see, did they implement at the policy level? Did they learn how this solution worked? Did they include it in their national policies? And if so, it's a big impact with few money. So I just wanted to specify how we concretely work, because sometimes SSTC could be up in the air and sounds not very concrete, but it can be very concrete, and it can also be done in collaboration with other UN agencies. I made the example on purpose on the RBA project, because this is where the agencies are going. We have to build on our comparative advantages and do something together that has an impact on the ground. Even if it's done together with more agency, the more the better. They have different strengths. I've been in FAO since it was a simple office of South-South Triangle Cooperation. Now it's a full-fledged division. And now I'm in WFP, so I can see both sides. And it's we have strengths and weaknesses that can complement each other. And Germany, allow me to say, is one of the countries that is already familiar with the SSTC mechanism. We mentioned several times the low carbon tea project in Kenya. So why don't we further explore how we could enhance the mechanism? How could we use this mechanism? Also through co-financing, because it has worked very well with China, with Germany and China. Why don't we use the same model, let's say, to further explore other areas where we could have leverage and could have expertise, and share the good practices? Over from my side.
related to it.
Unless Carolin wants to respond to that right away, I have a question here by Jürgen, but Carolin, if you wanted to respond.
Yeah, maybe just quick, because thank you very much, Allegra, for your answer, and also for highlighting the importance of SSTC and also maybe the German contribution. Actually, I wanted to say that one of the findings of the Policies Against Hunger conference was also that a better collaboration between the RBAs is needed, because this complementing of their efforts is really what we need to join forces to transform the food systems. And I definitely also see the point that if you say that SSTC approaches produces transferable outcomes in a sense of a blueprint which could be transposed to other countries, to other contexts, this is very valuable, because we do this as BMEL in the context of our bilateral trust fund projects with the FAO concerning CFS, for example. So we always look, is the outcome of the project, is there a transferable outcome which we can transpose into another context, because it is cost effective, it is easily transferable. So I very much value this approach. I have to say, nevertheless, that the triangular cooperation, or the SSTC approach, is mainly done by the BMZ, I think, the Ministry for Economic Development. However, I think my colleagues from our project units, which are in charge of project cooperation, are also in this call. So maybe if they want to pop in to answer Allegra's question, I happily would give the floor to them also. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. Perhaps we will find some platform to continue this conversation. We were hoping for the GFFA, for example, as a good opportunity to dig a bit deeper, or before then. But right now, there is a question here by Jürgen Ritter. So
actually related to what has just been mentioned, this project in Kenya. I'm a very practical person, you know. The necessity or the advantages of these corporations is very clear, and also I think generally acknowledged. I'm just wondering, I've been working in bilateral projects mainly, which keeps your hands busy in general. Now, how does it work with a triangular project? For example, the project in Kenya, how did that actually work in terms of coordinating the work and the inputs from China and Germany on the question of tea? Germany does not have much expertise in tea plantations. So was it more just like a financial input, or was there also expertise of other kind? And how did that come together with the Chinese experts and the Kenyan experts? Can you give some details on how the project was actually working?
Is the question to Yuhe?
Oh, actually to everybody, because all sides were involved somehow. Yeah. Do you know anything about this?
Actually, I'm also a new person to this project, but I know something. I will share some information.
Maybe. If you want, I can say a few words on this, as you prefer.
Yes, please. I mean, yeah.
Please go ahead.
You can.
You go ahead, Allegra.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is a very good example, Jürgen, on a triangular cooperation project, because we have an OECD country, Germany, working together with the Global South. And Germany, in this case, not only provides financial support, but also provides technical support. The project was called the Global Low Carbon Tea Project. It was a triangular cooperation project in tea value chain in the Republic of Kenya. I think it was around 2.5 million at the time, and it was partially funded by Germany together with China. And the aim of the project was to promote low carbon tea production and in general the value chain development in Kenya, by utilizing, and this is why it's an SSTC project, by utilizing Chinese and German expertise and also technologies. So it started, so the negotiation started in 2019, and I think the project started a year after. And the project objective was to strengthen Kenya's tea value chain to support rural livelihoods. And at the end of the day, it contributed to climate action through SSTC. That's why as Germany was involved. And the implementation was coordinated by FAO, GIZ. There was also the Foreign Economic Cooperation Center of MARA, the Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, but also the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences was involved, together with the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, plus the Kenyan Tea Development Agency, and also, if I'm not mistaken, also the Ethical Tea Partnership. So all actors, including at the local level, were involved. And why did they select the tea value chain? Because tea production is very sensitive to changes in some growing conditions. So they said, given that Kenya is one of the world's largest tea exporter, I think it was at the time the third largest tea producer, and has 10% of its population that relies on this income that comes from this work in the local tea industry. So they said, and they said why, and climate change was impacting on tea yield, and this could have led to catastrophic economic losses to the local smallholder farmers working on the tea production. So Germany, China, and FAO, they wanted to join forces. And why don't we work on sustainable agricultural development and try to combat climate change in Kenya? And they did it through this trilateral project they call it carbon neutral tea value chains. So there were two pillars. One was the cooperation between CAS, the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, and FAO. That started a year back, where they call it pardon my pronunciation, but they call it the Li Shui model. I think it's a province in China. That's why they gave this name, and it was for carbon neutrality that was developed. So they used traditional tea planting and cropping, but it was combined with automatized digital system based on big data. So this was one pillar. The other pillar was the previous work in Kenya on carbon reduction. And I think GIZ has been worked with this Kenya Tea Development Agency and the Ethical Tea Partnership and others actors that are integrated into the private sector, let's say the local private sector, that they try to increase energy efficiencies in tea factories. So they have the technology to save greenhouse gas emissions and increase the income at the end of the day of smallholder farmers. So it was a good match between China, Germany, using SSTC. And the caveat, of course, the Kenyan government at the time expressed interest in this trilateral project on carbon neutral tea value chains with China and Germany, and simply FAO facilitated, because SSTC, one of the key principles of SSTC is that is demand driven, is country led. So Kenya was the first one who wanted, let's say, this project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yuhe, do you want to add something, or
I think Allegra, Ms. Allegra has a very detailed information about the project. I don't have much more to add. So this year we just started this project, and we collaborate with CAAS TAS, the experts from there, and they said they will maybe do the further activities to Kenya.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Allegra, too.
I think we have another question by Rita in the audience. Rita, go ahead. I'm not sure. 2 questions.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. I was wondering that, well, SSTC is a mechanism to show best practices. And as, if I'm not wrong, well, World Bank has mechanisms like that. They started in the 1990s already with mechanisms to exchange best practices and to show best practices. And still, as you mentioned, Michaela, we are far from achieving SDG 2. And when what I have heard, maybe I'm wrong, those best practices, they are very much focusing on the production side of food security, of producing food. And are there also, this is a question, is there also best practice exchange on how to distribute food, that those people have access and it's available for people, what the key element to the right to food? And also the consumption side, are there exchanges on best practices, how to do on policy, how to do this to assure that consumers are also aware where they can get this food and all that. So about distribution and also the whole value, those best practices, are they, well, this is just a question, is it really so much on production, or are there also exchanges on other aspects of in the value chain to get access to food? And then the other side, as Yuhe also, I'm very practical when I see, well, tea production, it's very much focused on one production. And does that make people really, they have income, well, but it's not a very resilient food system, I would say. If there are interruptions in that, if they can't sell their tea anymore for whatever reason, they will starve because they don't have any other thing to eat. So those best practices, what the approach to a food system, it's do these mechanisms and instruments integrate those challenges? And yeah, that is my question.
May I come in, Michaela?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Just to respond to Rita's question, SSTC, we made the example. I made the example of the low carbon tea project because it was one of the examples of a fruitful collaboration between Germany and China using the South-South and Triangular Cooperation Mechanism. But that was a project that was born when I was in FAO. So that's why, let's say, it was more, let's say, on the production side. But SSTC can be used to cover the whole value chain, and it is not, let's say, only related to the production. Just to give you another example, I worked on a rice value chain project that was following the whole value chain in using SSTC that contributed to rice self-sufficiency in target countries in two regions, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, and the Philippines at the time when I was in FAO. So just to give you an example that we don't cover only the production phase. We try to have also, to the extent possible, and when, of course, the resource partner that also gives us the financial but also technical support, if they allow us to cover the full value chain, SSTC can definitely work also on that. And SSTC is also a multi-stakeholder approach, meaning that, so we don't cover only one aspect, so not just the production, but also we work together with other actors. And you mentioned the World Bank before, and we are trying to have a multi-stakeholder approach by working more not only with governments but also with NGOs, the civil society, the academia, IFIs. And you mentioned the best practices. Yes, some IFIs have their own let's say, mechanism. Just for example, ISDB has this sort of reverse linkage, which is very similar to what SSTC is doing. So that's why we are also increasing our cooperation and collaboration with these actors to make sure that we can enhance the impact, because we're talking the same language, we are doing something very similar. So we started our increasing our cooperation with the different actors, including IFIs. I don't know, Rita, if I answered your question, and otherwise happy to further support you.
If there is no other comments from the other speakers, I briefly just wanted to ask everybody, as always, we do a very short survey. It literally takes just a few seconds. We would be very grateful if you could help us by scanning the code you are seeing on the screen right now, or you can go to the chat in the Zoom and you'll find a link there. It's just literally a couple of seconds, and then you're done. So very grateful if you could help and fill out our survey. We have very little time left before we are wrapping up. So let me ask if there's any other question in the group, or perhaps speakers to each other. If not, perhaps as a very short, just taking stock from all three speakers to wrap it up, let me ask you what you think. How could Germany and China improve cooperation, international cooperation on international food security? Or perhaps, is that necessary? Do the two countries have to do this? Or do we have other mechanisms that would not require direct country cooperation? But where would you see potentials for synergy specifically between Germany and China? Because we've heard a lot is happening, both countries are doing a lot, but it's not always, the synergies aren't always as much there as they should be, perhaps. So let me go around and ask all three speakers to wrap up how you would, what your take on this. Do you want to start, Yuhe? What would you think?
Okay, thank you. For this question, in my mind, is that okay here?
Yes, yes.
Do I need to?
I think it's okay. It's
okay.
You're on the
It's
screen.
okay. Okay. I think both China and Germany has their own advantages in agricultural development, and Germany has German agricultural products have very good qualities, and they have very advanced technologies, and like the agricultural machinery are very advanced. And in China is a very traditional agricultural country, and the central government attach importance to the rural development and agricultural production. And we have a very big market. And as two big countries, China and Germany both have very rich experience on agricultural development and rural affairs and food securities. So they both contribute a lot to the global food security. As we have talked a lot on the food production before, I think we might the food loss and waste reduction is also very important areas to the food security. As we all know that in 2021, the food loss and reduction, food loss and waste reduction conference was successfully held in Jinan, Shandong province, China, and over 50 countries come to attend this conference, and they have reached the consensus in this area. So I think this might be a point to for the China and Germany to cooperate, and we can go through some platform like the FAO or WFP or some international organizations to both on the bilateral or the triangular cooperation, as just mentioned, some models to go further. Yeah.
Well, we are happy you're saying that, because the DCZ has been working a lot on the issue of food loss and waste.
Oh, yeah.
But we are running out of time. Just briefly, if I could get a last statement from Carolin and Allegra. Carolin, do you have a view on?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Michaela, and also thank you, Yuhe, for pointing out the food loss and waste component, which is of course very important to us. I will not focus too much on the bilateral side because this is not the main area where I work, but I feel we already have a good cooperation between the Chinese and German institutions, and I think it's very important to keep this dialogue going on. I would like to focus in my last point on the multilateral cooperation. So the work in FAO, in CFS, but also I think for the Ministry for Economic Development within with WFP and IFAD. And I think Germany and China should focus on the commonalities which they have. So the goals which we have together, we want to go on this climate friendly and sustainable road. As big economies, I think we should work together and join forces in this multilateral fora and concentrate on the common goals we do have, because I think there is a lot to gain from it, and not to focus so much on the differences we certainly have, as every country has. Yes, so that would be my last point. Join forces in multilateral fora.
Thanks a lot. And lastly, last but not least, Allegra, your take, brief take on it.
Fully aligned with what Carolin just mentioned. I could see the synergies and the commonalities during our webinar, and let's use them and do something together by using each other's advantages, comparative advantages. More than happy to support you on this.
Thanks so much. I think I couldn't have said it better than what we've just heard from our three panelists. We need to wrap up now. Time is over. It was a great pleasure to have you here. We will send a follow-up to every panelist on this call and to everybody who was watching the call. We're not taking noise. It's important.
Sure.
Yeah. And we hope we will continue the discussion somewhere, perhaps at GFFA, perhaps in some other format, in some other forum. Thanks so much for joining, and see you next time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.